Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm getting ready to put the boat in the water. I'd like to tell you that I'm going out fishing and going to catch something really big, but today I'm putting the boat in the water to try to troubleshoot a problem. Another boater approached me and pretty much said, hey, did you notice that your bilge pump is coming on quite a bit? So what it was is while I was sitting there in the water, my boat was filling up with water, and then my bilge pump would turn on and flush it all out. So today I'm going to show you different ways you can troubleshoot to find out where the problem is of why the boat is leaking. And this is something that's serious, because if I was out in the water and my bilge pump failed and wasn't working anymore, my boat could sink. So before I put the boat in the water, I'm actually just backing it up down and making sure I'm keeping the plug out for a second just to let it all drain out, because if I want to try to troubleshoot a leak, I probably want it as dry as possible before I put it in the water to begin with. So just gonna let this drain for a little bit. So I open up that valve to see if the through-hull fitting was leaking. Doesn't appear to have too much water intrusion. It's a little damp in there, but that's natural. And this one, open up that valve as well. Again, no real active leak, especially if how much was coming through. I mean, there's a little water down there, but it doesn't look like it's getting worse. Doesn't look like it's dripping. Looks like it's just water that was in there anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the Livewell on, and then we're going to check these connections right here, where it's coming out of that valve. And we're also going to check around the bilge pump, that yellow thing there, and those wires coming off it, the hoses coming off of it. So we have the Livewell filling up. The drain going on there. So before it starts draining, we should be able to check to see if water's filling up in the bilge now. Okay, so what I did is I closed this valve right here that's going to the Livewell pump. And the reason why I closed that one is when I opened them both up and I didn't run the Livewell, there wasn't any water intrusion, at least I could see. Then when I started the Livewell, the bilge did start filling up and the bilge pump came on. And then it filled up again, bilge pump come on. It happened 3 times. So that seemed to be coming on even before the Livewell tank started to fill up. So that leads me to believe that it's probably the hose coming from the Livewell pump and going to the Livewell tank. Once I turn the Livewell off, I am assuming it created a vacuum. So even though the Livewell pump wasn't running, water was still coming in into the hose at some points. So that's telling me it's probably sucking it up and probably leaking it out somewhere in the middle of the boat, not making it up to the Livewell. But to test my theory, we'll close this valve and we're going to see if water's still coming in, because that could mean that it's completely the opposite side and that's just a leak somewhere on the outflow. Okay, so something just happened that I did not expect. So I closed the intake valve leading to the Livewell pump, but I kept open the drain valve. And I sat here for a few minutes and I watched the water level, and water was still coming in, and the bilge pump ended up coming back on. So now I closed both of them again. I'm going to sit here for a little while and see if it's still coming on. If not, then I just changed my mind, because if they were both closed and no water was coming in, they were both open, water was coming in, I closed the intake valve, water was still coming in, well, that kind of says that it could be the outflow valve, not the outflow valve, but the hose going to the outflow. So I may have just isolated the problem, that it's probably the hose coming from the baitwell tank to the outflow valve. So we're going to test that theory. Like I said, we're going to wait a few minutes and we'll see if it fills back up. If it doesn't, then I'm going to actually reopen the intake valve, run the Livewell, but don't let it get to the point where it's overflowing to go to the drain hose. And if I'm not getting any water intrusion, then that tells me it's 100% from the bait well tank to the outflow. So looks like we're troubleshooting, getting a little bit further along, and it looks like it's the problem right now. Okay, so with both valves closed, there's no water coming in. So now what I did is I opened up the intake valve. So I'm not going to turn the pump on. We're just going to open up the valve and we're going to see if water's coming in, because that'll tell me that's leaking before it gets to the hoses. All right, I've been sitting here with the valve open and the water level in the bilge has not been increasing. Bilge pump hasn't been coming on. So we're going to turn on the Livewell pump. We're going to let it fill up the bait well, but we're not going to let it overflow. So we have the valve closed on the outflow, and we are going to fill up the bait well. So this right here is going to tell us 100% if the water level in the bilge does not increase, and that means that the intake valve and the Livewell pump and the hose going to the bait well are all fine. So I filled up the bait well, but I didn't allow it to go and overflow here. So what I have going on right now is I have the valve, the intake valve open. I ran the Livewell, but I have the outtake or the drain valve closed. And the water level in the bilge is not rising. So I have 100% ruled out that has anything to do with the intake valve, the Livewell pump, or the connection to the bait well. We're gonna unplug this drain, but we're gonna keep the valve to the outflow going out of the through hull. We're gonna keep that closed. So in theory, what should happen here, if it is a hole or a break in the line of the hose, as the water's coming out of this drain, it should start to fill up the bilge. So as you can see, the water level in the bait tank is going down. The bubbles are telling you it's draining, even though the drain valve is closed. So the bilge pump did come on, so there is a leak 100% from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the hose that's going into the seacock there, the valve, and I'm going to cut a piece off and I'm going to take it down to West Marine and match it up and get about 25 feet of length. All right, so the first thing I'm doing is to remove that old hose. Just going to heat it up a little bit. I loosened up the radiator clamps that hold it on, and now I'll just heat it up, and hopefully when it's warmed up, it'll loosen it up a little bit and make it easier to pull off. These things are not easy to get off and on. So what I did is I heated it up, pulled it off, cut off a piece, and then I brought it to West Marine, matched it up. Alright, so when I go to put the new hose on, one of the first things I do is I'll put the clamps on it, because you don't want to put it on and then have 25 feet of hose to run through. But so the clamps don't slide down, I just take a little bit of duct tape and I kind of crumple it up. I don't try to do it neat or anything, and I make it so those will stay up there, so I can slide it on, and then I can then slide the radiator clamps up and tighten them down, and then I can remove the duct tape after. And then I'm going to take some Dawn dish soap and I'm going to put it on the inside of here as well as the outside of the male end. Alright, so we got this end connected down there, and what we did is we duct taped the new hose to the old hose, and while we're pushing it through that end, we've been pulling it out this end, and we're almost there. So to get at one of the radiator clamps on the front part of the boat, I'm going to have to use a socket. Now if I drop this, it's going to fall away into the boat's cavity and be lost forever. So what I'm doing is tying on fishing line to it, and that way if I drop it, I just reel it back in. So to test out, to make sure this was actually shortcut. We're just attaching a garden hose to the old hose. And sure enough, as you can see right here, there was a break in the hose. It was quite a big break.